All right, welcome back, everyone, and thanks for staying with us. It is the top of the hour, and we want to take you to D.C. We have been monitoring the Women's March coming out of Washington and across the entire world. Thousands of people nationwide, and again, in places like London and Barcelona, just out there marching for their rights, and many of them protesting the swearing in of our 45th president, Donald Trump, and also his administration and his cabinet that has yet to be filled. CBSN anchor Reena Ninan has been out there all day long, actually for the past couple of days, covering many inaugural festivities as well for us. Reena, you've been there, you've seen the people. Organizers were just hoping to get about 200,000, but they've gotten more than 200,000. What's the situation now, and has the march started?
You're absolutely right, DeMarco. Organizers, I believe, were not prepared for the number of people who actually attended here in D.C. They were expecting about 200,000, and organizers tell us there were about 500,000. I actually think that number could be even higher. One of the problems that arose was the fact that there was no cell phone service, so lots of people were getting a little jittery. It was peaceful and positive, but there was a little bit of uncertainty when you couldn't reach certain people, family members. Some of them were, there were 3 or 4 cases. I know people who came to our satellite truck trying to figure out a way to connect with lost family members. Typically what happens, DeMarco, and you know this, when we do large scale events from a media standpoint, like a debate or a presidential inauguration, the network will pay to have extra cell phone service. They'll call up AT&T, they'll call up Verizon, but the organizers didn't do that for this type of event. And so that's why it left most of us, all of us really in the dark, unable to even at some point do our live shots because we didn't have the cell phone signals and people were unable to phone or to text or to communicate. What has helped now, the behind me is where the stage and the performers were. That has shut down. That was supposed to end at 1:15. It didn't end until 3:30. What helped with that is that there were so many people who were bussed into Washington, D.C. from various cities throughout the country, and their buses were set to leave at about 3 o'clock, 3:30. So many of them were forced to get on the buses. So that helped ease up the number of people. And as Alex was reporting, the marchers, she was able to see many of them march, but from my location, which is where the stage was and the back of sort of the protest line was expected to, the march line was expected to be, they didn't make it to the White House because they physically could not move through the space to get there. But word never came to the folks here that the march itself was not going to take place at the White House. So people were watching the program here expecting to march, and at one point it was supposed to end at 1:15. Starting at 1 o'clock, the marchers were saying, "Let us march, we want to march." They had had enough and they really wanted to walk to the White House. They felt, that was the people we spoke to, that it was symbolic. They wanted to get to the footsteps of Donald Trump's front door to send a message. Another thing that really stood out to me, DeMarco, was the fact that this was such a grassroots level organization. People showed up with handwritten signs, different types of signs, slogans, things that they believed passionately about that they wanted to make sure continued to stay. Reproductive rights, civil rights, LGBT rights, and they were peaceful and kind to each other. At one point, our crew needed to cut through about 150 feet worth of people who were packed, jammed in. They parted an area. It was like the Red Sea parting to allow myself, my producer, and our camera team to make it to our satellite truck. I mean, everyone was kind and good to each other, and it's a good thing because with crowds that were like this, as unexpected as the numbers were, one or just a handful of rowdy people could have completely turned this entire event. But these folks here, organized from various parts around this country, came to Washington for the day. And what helped ease the numbers were many of them had to get back on that bus. And that's sort of how you can tell now the march has ended and people are heading home.
Yeah, Reena, we've actually been taking a look at some of the aerial shots there of the thousands of people who have been in Washington all day long, and places like Boston and Chicago, where they were expecting 22,000 at Bryant Park, but it turned out they received about 150,000. So many people that police started telling people, hey, stay home, don't come out here, and also in Los Angeles as well. You talked about the messages and the concerns that protesters and demonstrators wanted to get heard from and by the new administration and the 45th president. Also, some people were saying it wasn't just an anti-Trump situation. Can you explain that?
Well, this whole idea came from two women who had posted on Facebook that they wanted to do something like this. They were in different parts of the country. They came together, and there was some concern that this wouldn't be inclusive of everyone, people of color, people of different sexual orientations. I got to tell you, that was not the case. This was a fully represented march of people from all different walks of life, backgrounds, regions of the country. I mean, people as far as California, Indiana, Florida. Many of them got on buses, some of them got on planes, and they really only came out for the day. They came out yesterday, or many of those buses came out this morning and they left this afternoon. And they feel passionately. When I spoke to them, you know, one woman who was 30 years old said to me her conservative parents told her, it's un-American for you to come out and march in something like this the day after Donald Trump has been goes into the White House. And she said it was the first time in her life she felt that she could lose some of her rights that she's been guaranteed for the past 30 years. And that's why she told her parents she felt she had to be here.
And a final moment from you, Reena, if you can. This is obviously historic here. We look at the big marches that have taken place there in our nation's capital, even when you think about Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, the protests surrounding Roe versus Wade as well. Talk about the little girl and some of the stories that you've heard. You said there was a young lady who had to ride the bus there. She actually called it a stinky bus, but I'm sure decades from now she will realize that she was a part of history.
She was a part of history. Sweet girl. You know, it is sort of a bit of a marathon, DeMarco. Many of these people, she was one of them. She got on a bus 4 hours away early this morning, sat on the bus for 4 hours, and then she came here to this march, which started at 10 a.m. and just ended at 3:30. A little 7-year-old girl. She said she was glad she came. She understood why Mama brought her here, but she also said it was a hot, stinky bus, and she had to get back on the hot, stinky bus, but she was glad she ultimately came.
All right, you have done an absolutely amazing job reporting. And by the way, loved your gown last night for the inauguration balls and stuff there. So you're doing a good job in making us proud here. Reena, thank you so much.
Thank you, DeMarco.